Today's episode is a little different. We are switching to English because our guest is an American living in the Czech Republic. Our today's guest is Taylor, and you might know her from Instagram as Taylor Takes Prague, where she shares all kinds of honest, funny, and real moments about life as a foreigner in the Czech Republic. She's also a co-host of a new podcast, actually, Picking Up and Piecing Out podcast. Hi, Taylor. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I have to ask, I mean, this is honestly pretty simple first question for us, but how did you end up living in the Czech Republic?
So you say this is a simple first question, but it's actually kind of a long story. I'll make it as brief as I can. In 2019, I studied abroad in Prague for 1 month. And during that time, the first week while I was there, I randomly met my boyfriend. He is half Czech, half British, but he grew up in the UK. His mom lived in the Czech Republic until the early 90s, and she moved to England, but he still has family there, so he would visit every summer. So we randomly met each other on a night out. I actually had my first ever Czech lesson that day. So I told the girls I was with that I wanted to try to practice with some Czech guys. So I went up to Mark and his family friends because I thought that they looked Czech. I still don't really know what that even means. I don't think there's a super Czech look, but I went up to them and I was right. They were Czech. And then Mark instantly spoke back to me in English and knew that I was American, obviously. So we were in a long distance relationship, seeing each other every couple of months. And then COVID happened and we were separated for about 4 months, but we both got remote jobs. And this meant that we started spending more time with each other. We would also spend a lot of time in Prague, like a couple weeks at a time. We would stay at his family's house there. And as time went on, we were thinking, where are we going to actually move and start our life together? And we were choosing between London, where all of Mark's friends were, and Prague. The US was never an option for us. I'd always been interested in moving out of the country. And so it was kind of easy because we never had to decide, my country or your country. I was very willing to move. And we decided on Prague for so many different reasons. But we've officially been living there for about 10 months, and I just got my temporary residence permit approved. So it was
Awesome.
a long process. Yeah, super long process, but it was great being able to apply from within the country and stay in the country. I know that's not the case for every visa in the Czech Republic, but it was for the one I applied for. So it's, nice that I was able to start my life there last year. But really happy to have that approved. But yeah, that's what brings me to the Czech Republic and to Prague.
And I have to ask, what were your very first impressions of Prague or Czech Republic? Did you like it here?
I will be honest that I didn't know much about the Czech Republic before studying in Prague. I mean, being completely frank, as an American in the American education system, unfortunately, we learn so little about other countries, and we're really in a bubble where we consume so much, American media, American movies, American music. And so I really didn't know much about the Czech Republic. Even now, today, some of my friends still say that I live in Czechoslovakia, which just, shows how little people know, considering that Czechoslovakia hasn't existed long, like years before I was even born. But my first impression when I got here to Prague, I was mostly shocked with the architecture, and that still shocks me every single day when I go outside. Knowing the history of the city and how thankfully it didn't face as much destruction as other surrounding cities in Europe during wars and conflicts, and so much of the architecture is really well preserved. I think that was the biggest shock to me. I also remember learning, we got this packet in my study abroad program trying to teach you what Czech people are like, basically, and what to expect. And I remember one of the things was saying something that because Czech is formerly was part of the Soviet bloc, that Czech people are cold and unfriendly and that they won't smile at you, so don't try to talk to them. And I know that, I see this a lot on social media, and I think Czech people kind of take this in stride and it's kind of a joke to them. But I don't think that Czech people are cold and unfriendly. I've had a lot of experiences where Czech people going on a walk will say hi, and I really don't notice that massive of a difference between strangers, friendliness, in the US and the UK, sorry, in the US and in Prague. Even for example, I went to the doctor a couple months ago, and um, I think there was mostly Czech people in the waiting room. And every time someone entered the waiting room, every single person said "Dobrý den." And when they left, everyone was like "Naschledanou." Well, in the US, if you were in a waiting room, you would never ever interact with the people in the room. So, I
Mhm.
think that going in, I was kind of led to believe that Czech people were a certain way, and I just don't think that that is true. I don't think that that stereotype is true from my perspective.
Oh, that's awesome, and thank you for sharing this. So this question kind of arises from the fact that you were saying you were trying to interact with people. So were you learning Czech? Were you learning Czech language? And what do you think about Czech? Because we've heard that it's pretty hard language, but I mean I've learned it since I was a baby, so I can't compare it with anything else.
While I was in Prague for 1 month, my main class was a journalism class, but we did also have to take a Czech class as well. It was super, super basic, and it basically taught us numbers and basic phrases. After that, and since I was with my boyfriend, Mark, also, he does speak Czech, so he learned through his mom growing up. So he never took, Czech school or anything. So he's definitely fluent, but he does have the grammatical error, which I never noticed, obviously. But I know that, as we moved, his Czech has been improving now that he's using it more. But over the next few years, I was still kind of picking up on some Czech, but not very actively learning. I would do some lessons online here and there. And also Mark's mom would teach me some things as well, especially when we decided, yes, we're gonna move to the Czech Republic. But now I have been in lessons for 8 months, so I take two lessons a week. So I study for 3 hours a week, and yeah, I mean, I think it's going well. I think, it's nice to have the privilege to be able to learn it slowly because I know a lot of people come to Prague and they have to start working in an industry where you really need to speak Czech. So I feel lucky that I'm able to take it a little bit more slowly. As an American whose family has been in America for a very long time, I don't know any other languages, so learning Czech, yeah, it's really difficult. I mean, they say it's one of the hardest languages for native English speakers to learn, but I have been really encouraged by a lot of my Czech followers on social media, also my boyfriend and his Czech family, and I also now have some friends as well who are Czech. So I get a lot of encouragement from them, and I actually feel really strongly about learning Czech because I know that a lot of foreigners who come to Prague, they choose not to learn it. And, I think maybe if you're only planning on being there for a year or something, I can understand. But I think that, knowing Czech history and that for a period of time that, Czech people were made to speak German and write in German and that the language was almost lost, I do think that learning Czech, if you're living in the country, is like a sign of respect to the culture and to the people. So I feel super strongly about that. And I definitely recommend in-person classes because it actually forces me to have to go and sit somewhere for 3 hours a week. Because otherwise, if I was just trying online, I don't think I would be as consistent.
And you said that you don't think that Czechs are cold, but actually, how do you think that they treat foreign people? Because I'm not sure that they are really welcoming.
Yeah, this is a good question. I definitely have had some, I guess, mixed experiences. And obviously, I'm coming at this from the perspective of, a girl who is white and American. So, it's going to be different depending on where you're from and your ethnicity and stuff. I have like had a handful of negative experiences, especially, I think with me not being able to speak Czech. I had one like 2 months ago where I had to go to a hospital to return something for my boyfriend, and he's on the public system, I'm on the private, so most of the clinics I go to are very English speaking. but this one was like fully Czech speaking, and I'm always ready with my Google Translate and stuff, to assist me because at my stage I can say very basic things, but if someone asks me a question, I'm probably not going to know what they said, unless if they ask, "Do you speak Czech?" But the woman was just very unwilling to try to communicate with me over Translate, and she was kind of getting in my face and yelling at me, and I just felt that was one of the times where I did just feel like an outsider, and I just felt like, there was other people in the room, and I felt really embarrassed because they probably all could hear what she was saying about me, but I didn't know what she was saying about me, and like it's a not a good feeling, and I'm sure, I don't know. I guess you guys probably learned English from a young age, so it might be a little different, but it's like it's not a good feeling when you feel like you can't speak up for yourself and defend yourself if someone's sort of yelling at your face in your face, but you do just have to take it with a grain of salt, I think, and just I know in my heart that I have a lot of respect for the Czech Republic and that, I'm learning the language and people are always going to have their prejudices, and some people might not like me, and I definitely get comments on social media, mean comments. But 99.9% of the Czech people who comment are really nice. So I do think um, overall that, you know, Czech people, I think compared to Americans, I think they are just more straightforward and blunt, but I don't think that that's cold. I think Americans are just too fake, honestly. Like, I don't know, Adam, I know you live in the US. We're super fake. Like, it is true that you are just like overly nice and you're afraid to say something to someone because you're worried, that it's going to be mean, and I think that we go to such an extreme in the US that that's why Americans when they go to other countries, they think people are so cold, but I think, you know, I don't know. I haven't had the experience where Czech people have been cold, but I think, a lot of the friends I've made there are also around my age, and a lot of them grew up, like watching American movies and shows and stuff. So I think they generally have a more positive, like, outlook on America. And so they don't like, judge me because of where I'm from. So I think that that helps too. But
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I agree with you that it really depends on who you meet and who is in your comment section sometimes. So, but yeah, I'm glad you have 99.9% is the positive experience with Czechs. So I'm
yeah,
glad.
well, and when it comes to the language too, I've heard I have some social media friends who live in Paris and are learning French, and it seems
Mhm.
like a lot harder to be an American there and try to learn French because it seems like you'll have a harder time trying to speak to French people in French. Like they don't really want to talk to you. That's the stereotype that I've seen.
Yeah.
But when I do speak Czech in public, like at restaurants and in stores, the I find that the people are super nice a lot of times, especially if my boyfriend's with me and he's speaking Czech, they'll like laugh like in a friendly way. Like they're happy that I'm like speaking Czech and I don't have that same experience. So I do think that there are a lot of more welcoming aspects of Prague. Obviously, I can't speak to the country as a whole because I've only lived in Prague. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's getting better. But as you are sharing your experiences in Czech, when I first came to the United States and then went back to Czech Republic, I felt like I don't belong, kind of, because I kind of forgot everything I've learned as a kid. So do you ever have the same thing when you return back to the United States? Are you sometimes like, oh, what do I do in this situation?
Definitely, especially because I haven't really lived in the US for a number of years just because I've spent a lot of time traveling and sometime in the UK, sometime in Prague, and bouncing around. So my life hasn't really been here since like 2021 or 2022. So when I come home, I definitely am surprised by a lot of situations. Something I've been really surprised at this time, because I'm actually visiting home right now, is the servers at the restaurants. And I know people always say that American servers are super overbearing. And, I used to be a server and a bartender here, so I know, we have to hustle for the tips, but I've definitely noticed it more than I would have before. Like, I'm like, wow, I kind of get what people are saying when they say that American servers can be a little in your face. Um, and asking you constantly if you want anything, if you need anything. Um, yeah, I would say that like those are probably the main things, but I think just as I live longer in the Czech Republic and, my our plan as of now is to stay there. So like eventually one day I'd want to become a Czech citizen, and I think just over the years that I could see, more aspects about myself changing and shifting, and it'll be really interesting to see what those actually are.
That actually reminds me, do you feel that you've like picked up any little Czech habits, like I don't know, taking off your shoes when you're visiting someone or something like that?
Yeah, there honestly are a lot, and I think that this is also being in Prague, but having a boyfriend who is, from England and is European. Taking off my shoes, yeah, definitely. In the US, we do just keep them on in our house, and it is so disgusting. And I really never thought about that before. Growing up, if someone would come to your house and take off their shoes, we would literally make fun of them because we're like, yeah, like we would laugh at them if someone took off their shoes because we think it's like sort of like a weak thing to do. I know that sounds so ridiculous, but yeah, we always take off our shoes, wear slippers in the house. And when my mom visits, she brings a pair of slippers to Prague because, I've warned her that she needs to take her shoes off in the house. Drinking tap water. Um, in the US, like my parents don't drink tap water ever, and they think that it tastes gross. And to be fair, the US water system is pretty poor. The tap water is definitely safe, but there have been some instances, in different states where there have been like contaminants. So I think there's less trust for the tap water here. But now, in Prague, obviously, I always drink tap water. Um, Hanging my washing on a drying rack. So my apartment, my flat, or I don't know what you guys would actually say. I think Czech people kind of, I think, don't they learn British English in school or something? Like, do they kind of have a mix
Mainly.
of both?
Yeah, exactly.
So in my flat, there is a dryer, washer dryer combo, but the dryer sucks. And I know that a lot of people don't often use dryers, especially for, certain clothes. So now I just hang dry everything. So yeah, there's a lot of little things that have changed about me. Also, another thing, I haven't fully given this up, but I don't know if you guys would notice this as much, maybe more women listening, but in the US, it's super common to wear athleisure, like workout leggings and like a sports bra. You would just wear that to the workout class, but I started noticing that all of the Czech women in my classes would come in normal clothes, even on the weekends. So they weren't like at work or something. They would come in normal clothes, change into the workout clothes, then change back into normal clothes. In the US, like we don't do that, unless you're in between at the office or something. So I haven't fully given up wearing athleisure in public yet, but maybe that's something that will adjust over time.
No, that's funny you say that because, yeah, I have the same. It happened to me. It's the same situation, you know. I was wearing normal clothes to the gym and then kind of dressing up, and everyone was looking at me like I'm the weirdo in a way. As well as I don't know now mainly for I guess men athletes here in the US when you are running you are usually running shirtless. In the Czech there is not many people running shirtless around. So those are really interesting things you don't think about daily. But it's really cool to notice that. But yeah, we talked about language, we talked about habits, but I believe culture kind of consists from language, habits, and food. So now was there any Czech dish you didn't like at first, but now you I don't want to say love it, but you can enjoy it more.
I love talking about Czech food. And I'm really lucky because even before I moved to Prague, Mark's mom in England would be making Czech food. So she would really often make, sorry if I don't pronounce these the best, but she would often make řízek,
Uh-huh.
very often, and potato salad. She would also make goulash a lot, and kolida.
Uh-huh. Gleda.
Um, so I did sort of start to learn more about Czech food and like get a palate for it. If there's anything I didn't like at first, I have tried a lot of a lot of Czech foods. I would say that the one that I was I guess, most nerves to try. I forget exactly what it's called, but it was on St. Martin's Day last year, and
Uh-huh.
you eat goose on that day. So there was a soup with goose intestines, and I
Yeah.
was like, I've never eaten intestines before, but it was really good. Yeah, like I'm so willing to try. And my boyfriend obviously grew up eating Czech food, so we eat Czech food a lot. I think though Prague has a really good food scene in general. I think there's a lot of really good Asian food as well. So yeah, we're eating out like way too much, but I really want to start a series on social media of me trying to cook Czech food. I just think that'd be really entertaining. I have helped Mark's mom a bit with making knedlíky and getting the shape right and stuff, but that's kind of
Uh,
the extent of what I've done.
Yeah. And is there any Czech food that you still just don't get?
I probably the pork knuckle. I don't know if that's like actually a common thing to eat or this is more you see it in the tourist center, but
yeah.
that's one that I haven't tried. Like I would take a bite, but I don't think I would just order it because it kind of intimidates me. Is that something that you guys would actually eat or?
So me personally, my family is really like healthy eaters, not much pork and this stuff. So I would say Czech kitchen is kind of slowly dying. So these, dumplings and a lot of fat food, a lot of pork, I don't think we eat it as often. So I would say it's a lot of the times it's for tourists to try it out or for Czechs to just kind of remind themselves about Czech culture and what it is, rather than we eat it often. So yeah, I wouldn't say that we eat it that often, but
Oh,
I understand you also. I don't get it either.
yeah. One thing I do want to try is the carp, and I most Czech people have told me that they don't like it, and so at Christmas, their families will often make Žižek or something instead of the carp. But I just that's such a fun fact about Christmas in the Czech Republic that I feel like I need to try it.
With this next question, I think you have to be careful with your answer now because we are a big Czech beer culture. There is a big Czech beer culture, and we would like to know, your honest opinion about Czech beer and I would say our pop culture around it because it's very big there.
Such a good question. And this is actually so funny because my friends have brought up to me recently, my friends in the US, since I have seen them since I've been home, and they're shocked when we go out together and I order a beer because in the US, like, I think that drinks are like quite gendered. I don't know if you've noticed this, but growing up, I never ever drank beer unless it was at a frat party, like a warm beer playing beer pong. I would have never in a million years drank beer. And so before I studied in Prague, I actually, well, I had just turned 21, so I could go to the liquor store and buy them myself. I bought a bunch of different beers to try because I had no idea what I liked. I had never drank a full bottle of beer in my life. So I had my friends come over and we had like a beer practice night because I knew that going to Prague, I wanted to actually enjoy it and take part in it since it is such a big part of the culture. I also think, over the years, having a half British, half Czech boyfriend, beer is very big in both of those cultures. So I really just started to grow to love it. And I would say, I think, you know, probably my go-to order when I get a beer is either a Czarny Kozel. I do like the dark beer, but I don't know if you guys will have ever heard of this, but my boyfriend's cousin, who is born and raised in Prague, he said this thing where like dark beer like makes women's chest bigger. Have you heard this? Yeah, because I guess it's like more fatty. I don't know. So I get that. Like usually I'll just have one of those, but if we're going on like more of a night out, just have a Pilsen. Yeah. I love Czech beer though, and I love talking about it on social media. I think that also the Budvar and Budweiser Czech American trademark dispute is like super fascinating, and I think that you can't come to the Czech Republic and not take part in the beer culture. Also because they have a lot of non-alcoholic options too. which I think is great. And it makes so much sense because I think Czech people, like, they just want to have a beer just like to refresh themselves, which is so like novel to me because for me, I'd associate it with like going out now more like, enjoying a meal and stuff. So my my mindset on it has changed a lot, but yeah, like it's just such a big part of the culture and the mliko and the sneet, I think.
Hmm.
I've learned so much about it, and I did go to Pilsen recently too, and went to the brewery tour. So I'm like super down to keep, yeah, learning about it. Can you find it like in the US? Like I actually did see Pilsen on tap in Philly. That's the closest city to me. I saw it at one place, and I was super shocked.
Yeah. You can find Pilsner here in the US. It's harder, but you can. And I know there are some bigger, and I don't know how we would you call it in English, but there is like it's not a restaurant, but it's kind of all you can drink, rather all you can eat, and you are just like trying all the beers, and there is like 100 different types of beer, and I found I think two or three types of Czech beer
Oh,
there.
nice. Like a
So
brewery, sort of.
yeah, sort of, kind of, yeah. There is a lot of like tabs, and you can just like go by yourself, and you can
Mhm.
drink as much as you want, and then you pay based on how much you drank. So
What do you think about all the light beers? My boyfriend was like so shocked by that when he first came to the US
yeah,
because everyone's drinking Bud Light, Miller Light, Coors Light. That's pretty much it. Like
yeah.
when I was a bartender, 90% of the beers I served were those three, and those are light beers. And it's nothing to do with calories. Like it's like men are drinking these beers. Like it's like,
Uh-huh.
these like it's just that's just what
Yeah.
everyone drinks here is light beer.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, now I'm in North Carolina, and we have 40 degrees Celsius here. So I can't imagine drinking like heavy beer. So I think lighter beer is helpful, or like it makes more sense in this type of weather. But I guess up north I would be drinking normal Czech beers.
Yeah.
Um, I would like to compare a few cultural perspectives, maybe, because I'm thinking, what do you think that Americans think when you tell them that you live in Czech Republic?
Okay, so I'm gonna be just completely honest with this one. A lot of Americans think that it has one, that it's very close geographically to Russia, like that it's even bordering Russia. A lot of people, yeah, still think that it's Czechoslovakia. I think, definitely couldn't point it out on a map, really, for the most part. I think sometimes people will recognize the Czech Republic because of hockey players. There's been some famous hockey players, like um, I think Yager has played on some American teams. So that's the main things that come up. I think that a lot of my friends and family assume that where I live is similar to Western Europe, and that, when they see things about Italy and Spain, that like the Czech Republic is like just like that. Americans kind of bunch a lot of Europe together. Um, but yeah, I would say that those are probably the first things, but really most people know nothing about it, unfortunately.
Yeah, we are coming to the end here, so I'm sad to say that, but we have a couple of, I would say, two last questions,
Yeah.
and one of them is your most favorite Czech word,
Oh
if
my
there
God.
is one. And I understand it's hard to think about one because all of them are awesome and great, but you have really good pronunciation actually, because you already said few words, and I think it's really hard to pronounce some of them, and you pronounce them correctly. So, is
Okay.
there any?
This is such a good question. I'd probably say Kočka. Kočka.
Kočka, okay.
Is that right? Like, yeah, that was one of the first ones I learned. And I have cats, so that's just what came to mind. I do like that. Um, but
No, that's a good word. That's a good word. So do you travel with your cats to the Czech Republic?
No, they're just at my family's house in the
Oh,
US.
okay,
So,
okay, yeah.
And I saw on Instagram that you were talking about like must know phrases.
oh
Can you
yeah.
tell us some of them?
Well, in my day-to-day life, the one that I say the most probably is just "nie mluvím česky" or "mluvím trochu česky,"
Uh-huh.
um, which can be confusing because like I'll start speaking in Czech, or say like "karto prosím," and then they ask something, and then I'm like, "Oh, nie mluvím česky," so it's probably like what is going on, but yeah, those are the ones I feel like. I try not to take too many bolts since the public transport in Prague is so good, but I feel like the conversation in the bolts is always the same. We're just like, oh, Tari, right here, like right here. But the ones that I did in the video today, I really had to think of like what are big things in Czech culture. So I was thinking about the chatas, like the cabins, and the mushroom picking, and the borschtry, which I feel lucky that my boyfriend has Czech family because I haven't done mushroom picking or gone to a cabin, but I have roasted a lot of sausages on the fire. So I feel like I get to be part of like Czech culture by through my boyfriend's family and also, hear them speaking Czech and learning about Czech history. And, his uncle and mom both grew up, under the communist regime. And I think they just have a lot of like, important stories to tell that we don't get that perspective here in America. So I love to learn from them and just experience the culture with them and then also teach other people about it. Like, we talked about my social media, but I really see my audience as both as, Czech people, living in Prague or living abroad, foreigners who are living in Prague, but also just Americans who, need to know more about the Czech Republic because it's such an important, piece of European history, and there's just a lot to learn from it. So I really like talking about Czech culture and the language and stuff to people who know nothing about it.
That's a little bit connected with our last question. If someone from US wanted to move to Czech Republic, what would you tell them?
It's very philosophical, so it
Yeah.
can be it's very open-ended.
Yeah, I think I would tell them to learn the language and to eat all the food and to go to Czech cultural events. I when I studied in Prague, I only ate svíčková once, and that was the only Czech food I had, which is so embarrassing to say. But, I think that people will come here and Czech food might be intimidating to them, or the language is too intimidating, or, they just sort of make friends with other foreigners and that's it. So I would say, you know, embrace all the parts of Czech culture and also try to make friends who are Czech. There's a lot of ways you can do this, especially for women. There's a lot of like groups on Facebook and stuff. And yes, a lot of foreigners are in these groups, but there's a lot of Czech women in there too who are looking to make friends and international friends, or they're Czech women who, have lived abroad maybe for a couple years but are now back. So I think like don't stay in your bubble and don't just try to make American friends. Like really integrate yourself into Czech culture.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you for this. And I think it applies to anyone living abroad to, go out, make friends, just be yourself and kind of talk to people who live in that particular place. But yeah, thank you for your time. I think we would be able to talk to you for hours,
I
but
know.
it's unfortunately the time is limited. But in the future, we can definitely meet and do one, two, three more episodes if the time allows. But we appreciate you sharing the Czech culture with people, with everyone, with the world. We really appreciate it, and we think it's great. And we wish you good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me on the podcast.